Good evening, this is Robert Sidell. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this Sunday evening. Towards the end of November, we're heading into Thanksgiving this week. Such a great pleasure to be with you and share this moment in time with you. And this show is the Gateway Show on every Sunday night, 6 to 7 p.m. live. It's an attempt to share consciousness, not an attempt, it is an attempt to share uplifting, loving awareness that can contribute to the quality of your life and mine too. It's a win-win story here. So I just want you to know it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. It's a pleasure to share this time with you. You know what? I don't think any of us should ever take for granted even 1 second of life. So I just want you to know I consider it an honor and a privilege to be here. And my name is Robert Sidell, and I'm a practicing attorney for 47 years. Can you believe that? It's a long time I've been practicing law. When I got out of law school, I started my law practice with a big law firm that represented President Reagan, among many other people, well-known people, I should say. Got a chance to meet some very interesting celebrities and well-known people, and it was a very fascinating time in my life. And one of the celebrity clients we had at that time, which is public records, like I say, this was Howard Hughes' estate. He had passed away with this huge estate, and we were working on that. So I got a chance to work on that some. So there's a lot of interesting things, a lot of wonderful experiences for me. When I started that big law firm, I was there for a little less than 3 years, and then I came over to Nevada and started my law practice here in the early 80s. And you know what? I've been here ever since. So I've been in Vegas over 40 years now. Actually, a little more than that, actually. And so it's been a good journey for me. Hey, Debbie, how you doing? Nice to see you. It's one of the fun things about, by the way, for those of you on the radio, I'm simulcasting on Facebook too. And the show's also available on YouTube if you ever want to tune in later on and listen to a show on YouTube. Just type in Robert Sidell 46 for you. Will you say, what is 46 for you, Debbie? I'm just trying to think. 46 years doing what, I guess is what I ought to ask. But in any event, yeah, I'll see what she posts. You put down 46 for her. But like I say, it's been a fun. Oh well. Anyway, yeah. So Debbie's saying 46 years. Okay. So in any event, living in Las Vegas. I see. Okay, you've been here 46 years. Yeah, we've both been here a while now, Debbie. You know what? For me, it's been a really good journey here in Las Vegas, and I think the city just gets better and better. I got a chance to go to the one of the nights of the Grand Prix on Friday night. I went. Sat there and got cold. It was like 45 or 47 degrees outside. Luckily, I had a pretty good jacket, but still, I went with my kids, and it was just an opportunity to. But it was an interesting experience. I'll just say that much. I'm glad I went. Glad I had a chance to see it. Those cars drive by. I'll tell you what's funny about it. They drive by at like 190 miles an hour. So you know how much time you actually have a chance to see those cars while they're actually going in front of you? About a half a second. It's like zoop, they're gone, just like that. But it's a fun experience to be a part of the whole thing, and I'm glad I had a chance to participate. If you ever have a chance, sometimes you can buy one night, which is what we did, and it's not so unreasonable in its price. And so if you have a chance to do that next year as it rolls around, consider going. Like Thursday. I think the deals are a little bit better Thursday or Friday night, and then Saturday night is the actual race. But anyway, it was a fun experience to be a part of it. And Vegas has constantly got a lot of exciting things happening. Something else coming up that we try to go to in January. You have to have some friends or somebody to make this possible, but it's a Consumer Electronics Show, CES show. And that's a fun show if you've never been to it. And you have to have somebody that's in the business field that can help you get an admission to that. But, that's in the technical field. But it's a very fascinating show if you have a chance to go to it. And one of the things I just like about Las Vegas is we have these exciting different things happening here all the time. By the way, one of my favorite things is going to be happening starting about a week from now, and that's the National Finals Rodeo. I feel like I'm doing a promotional event for Las Vegas at the moment, but the National Finals Rodeo comes to Vegas. It's actually, I think, December 7th through I'm not sure the exact dates, but it's right around that time period for about 10 days. And you know what? It's one of my favorite things of all year round. It's fun to go to the rodeo. I don't go every single year, but a lot of times I do go, and that's fun to see too. A whole different game than I'm normal in my normal world, but that's a lot of fun. And there are courageous young men and women that do that, and some of the things are riskier than other things, but it's a very fascinating thing to watch. The bucking Broncos, that's kind of scary. That's pretty daring on those guys' parts Um, but anyway, what's also fun is they have what's called the Cowboy Gift Show or Cowboy Christmas. And there's a couple of different shows, but one is right there in the convention center that goes right along with, oh, December 5th through the 15th, Debbie's telling me. Okay, the 5th to the 15th. Yeah. It is, for me, it is like Christmas because, for one thing, I love going to the gift show. It has got every kind of Western thing you can imagine, everything from every kind of Western furniture, if you like wood furniture, leather, anything like that. All kinds of Native American jewelry. I've met some really nice Native American families there. So any kind of thing like that, if you like it. All kinds of any kind of jewelry you might like. Um, Anything Western, if you want a cowboy hat or a saddle or anything like that. Anything like that. I like. There's one of my friends has a clothing business over there, and it's called the Frontier Clothing Company. And you may have seen me wear my kind of colorful jackets I wear sometimes, and that's where I get some of those jackets. And I've been getting those for him for about 7 or 8 years now, maybe even 10 years. I hate to think about it, but I think it's been that long. And so it's allowed me to kind of create an unusual kind of wardrobe, which has been kind of fun for me to play a little bit. And by the way, I will tell you something funny. I was talking to my son about this the other day. One good thing about being a lawyer, at least if you're self-employed, there's quite a bit of tolerance. How can I put it exactly? You could be kind of a character, dress in colorful ways, things like that. At least at some stages of your career, anyway. And there seems to be a fair amount of acceptance of that, which is kind of fun. I mean, not every career has that, and there's some pretty famous. Pretty famous attorneys that have over the years kind of carved out I'm trying to think of, there's a guy named Jerry Spence, for example, up in Wyoming, I think he is, Jerry Spence, and he's a very creative lawyer. I just pulled him up. He always wears these leather fringe jackets. Maybe that's what I should get next, a leather fringe jacket. I kind of like that idea. But anyway, he wears those, and he's a real character, and he's very, very successful in what he does, and has really made a difference for a lot of people in their cases, and helps many, many people. So that's the other thing, believe it or not, that I really enjoy about law is the constant chance to learn and learn from very good speakers. I travel to lots of seminars out of town, and I also attend all the seminars in town, and I learn from what we call the greats. People that are just great trial attorneys, and their secrets and ways of communicating, and so it's a very good educational experience to grow as a human being. So it's funny, all these things, I never really guessed any of it when I started my law practice, like so many things in life. But as it turns out, it's actually been a really good place for me to journey along as making a living and expressing my life. I'll tell you one other thing as a lawyer, which is kind of fun for me. What I've been able to integrate in, really for a lot of years now, is the ability to bring kind of healing into my law practice too. A lot of people come to me. They come. I do injuries and accidents. That's all we do now. Years ago, I did other things, but for 20 years or more, actually about 24 or 5 years, all I've done is injuries and accidents. And fortunately, our clients like us, and we have very good reviews. But what I try to do with people is sometimes people come to me with very awful losses. Somebody just came to me recently and had just lost her daughter in a car accident, and so they come to me with some very, very severe situations and very severe injuries that may be life-changing. And not all of them are like that. I mean, a lot of our cases are moderate and even sometimes somewhat minor, but we can still help people out. But nonetheless, when they are really serious like that, I'm really grateful to be able to offer prayer and kind of some healing attitudes to people in a time that may be a very tough struggle for them. So for me, it's been an interesting opportunity to be an attorney, but to be able to bring, in fact, there's the terminology for a lawyer is what an attorney and counselor at law, right? Well, I am a counselor. I'm a counselor at law, and but I try to help people find their center a little bit after they've been in an accident. Even anything from really any accident is almost always disorienting to people, as you might imagine. I know some of the TV commercials, which I don't see that often, but I see them occasionally, make it seem a little humorous, but really, I have never met somebody in an accident that doesn't wish they didn't have it. I've never met anybody that wouldn't have preferred not to have it. And the more serious the injury, the more they would have preferred not to have it. Even if you're well compensated, you would still have preferred not to have the accident. Because if you get well compensated, that usually means you had a significant injury. So it's just one of those things about life. But on the other hand, if you did have a significant injury and you can be well compensated, it can make your life much better. So that's what we try to do, is we try to figure out the best way to get you through this jungle of law, which is not natural to us as human beings. And that's why I've been doing it for 47 years and go to all the seminars and classes, because it's a constantly moving target. It requires constant adaptation and growth and learning. But fortunately, and I really enjoy getting to know our clients. You know what? I have people coming to see me, that maybe I haven't seen for 20 years, and they suddenly show up in the office or stop by 10 years later. And so that's very, very rewarding to me when somebody stops by and to say hi, that just because they drove by and wanted to come in and say hi. That happened to me just last week for a young man that I first represented. Listen, it was 21 years ago. When he was 21, he showed up now in my house like at 42. He says, I just wanted to come by and say hi. That made me feel so good that he felt comfortable enough to want to do that. So that's, believe it or not, turned out to be one of the real gifts of my practice. It's kind of like having an extended family of friends, and it just kind of enriches my life and the life of other people as well. So this is Robert Sidell. You're listening to The Gateway Show. I'll be back in just a minute. When I come back, tonight I want to talk about how to be good to yourself. Be good to yourself, because you've got to learn how to do that. So it's Robert Sidell. You're listening to The Gateway Show. I'll be back in just a moment for those of you on the radio. So my friends that are listening on Facebook, first of all, it's always a pleasure to have you listening. You may, hello, Linda. How you doing? How you doing, Linda? You know what? I always appreciate all of you that tune in. I may or may not physically see you very often, but it doesn't mean that you don't make a difference to me. And also, the funny thing about it for me is somehow God's given me some sort of thing where I can feel kind of a connection, kind of a energetic connection, for lack of a better way to put it. So when people are listening, like each of you are listening, whether Debbie or Linda or other people listening, I can feel a presence that actually uplifts me. So by the way, my honest opinion is that's the ultimate hope for humanity. If we learned how to empower each other instead of disempowering each other, which is too much of the time, guess what? We can lift up the world in ways we could never imagine. Hey, Ernie, good to see you on there. Ernie's somebody I met, over 10 years ago. And I always like to say, for everybody listening, you never know when somebody new is going to walk into your life that will become a lifelong friend. So you should be open every week and every day to somebody like that coming into your life at the right time and the right way. And people make a difference. At the gym I go to, there's a Chinese gentleman that moved here from Taiwan, and he's made a difference to me. And we have a lot of fun conversations. And he moved here, and anyway, he just, like everybody else, he has a story, and he teaches me things, and I learn a lot from him, and it's been a lot of fun. Oh, Ernie says it's been 11 years from my radio show. Kind of amazing, Ernie. Time never stops, does it, for any of us? And that's, by the way, that's the whole lesson. I don't think there's any other lesson in life, really. I have a couple huge insights of life that are just underlying principles. The underlying principles are this: life is a gift. It's a supreme and eternal gift, and it's precious, and don't miss the opportunities as you move along. And that's really what I want to share tonight. Just don't miss those opportunities. Don't miss out on the gifts of life. Just hold on, I got some notes here. Just a minute here. Hold on 1 second here. That's what we want to try to stay tuned, don't we? We want to stay connected. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. There we go. Okay, good. Yeah, it's like if we don't want to get to the end of your life and say, "Gosh, I wish I reached out and shared more love. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had forgiven him or her. I wish I had cleared that relationship and brought love to it." It's better not to get you in your life like that. Maybe we might all have a little of that anyway, but as much as you can, try to heal your relationships. Try to reach out. Here, we're going back on the radio. Good evening, this is Robert Sidell. Great pleasure to be with you here on this Sunday evening. You're listening to The Gateway Show. It's my pleasure to be here with you. It's always a fun experience to be with you on the radio. I always learn a lot. I know it sounds funny to say I learn a lot from you, but I actually do. Because by doing this show, then I I kind of get to focus on things that I feel like I want to share. And guess what? That's how God teaches me. So when I listen to it, it gives me a chance to bring things through my awareness and keep uplifting and expanding my consciousness, which is, critical. Spiritual growth is a constant journey for all of us. And I'm kind of, if we all have different gifts, right? Every one of us, you have gifts, I have gifts. But probably one of my gifts, I'm a good learner. And when I was in law school, I learned well. And by the end of my first year in law school, I was, in my spring semester, I was number one in my class out of over 200 students. And then I went on to graduate in the top 10% of a major law school at UC Berkeley. So I'm a good student. But one of the lessons I've learned about it is you just keep moving ahead. You don't give up. You don't stop. And so, because all those other students were smart people. And so how is it that I ended up doing so well? It's really because I just kept persisting and developing my knowledge. Well, guess what? I've tried to do the same thing on the spiritual journey. I went through, I've gone through a series of different awakenings in my life, but starting back in my 20s especially, I hit some very, very major awakenings, which kind of changed my entire trajectory through this earth. Or another way of putting it is, it fulfilled my destiny. It was on the journey to coming along. But so in my 20s, I'd kind of been going along happily, sort of semi-agnostic a little bit, just saying, I don't really know the answer. Of course, I still don't know the ultimate answers by any means. But then I just kind of thought, it's probably most of these stories about God are just kind of made up stories. And I know a lot of people think that. And people I love and respect feel that way sometimes. I get it. And some of the stories may be made up. But what I did suddenly realize over a very short period of time in my 20s, probably when I was about 27 or 28, is that suddenly it was like a veil was lifted from my eyes. And I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is really truly a spiritual kingdom we're in. It's not just a material world. We're not just bodies. We have a divine, there's a living God. I have a divine destiny on this earth. We have a function and a purpose. And miracles are real and natural part of life. And all that became very clear to me in a very, very short period of time when I started having things happen that were so miraculous that I couldn't deny them. And so it started to made me reevaluate my life completely. So I went from a person thinking that almost everything in the Bible was probably just metaphorical or maybe even imagined stories, to suddenly thinking, even aside from its historical veracity as the Word of God, that just those stories were rooted in reality. I suddenly realized that Jesus was really walking around doing the things they said he did. And I suddenly had that realization in my 20s, and it changed my life 100%. And as a result of that, I started seeking out spiritual teachers and went to various churches and organizations and just started studying intensively, a little bit like I did in law school. And that journey that started back then, very, very intensively. By the way, I really look back at my own life. Probably some of you could say the same thing. It really started when I was 10 or 11 years old, when I was actually, believe it or not, on a TV show talking about the Bible. But that's a different story for a different day. So it started very young with me in one way. But still, in my teenage years, I kind of just fell away and focused on other things in my life and really questioned whether there was any real honesty. I wondered how much of it was just mythology, which a lot of people think. I get that. And I don't criticize it. It's a normal state of awareness, and each person has to progress through it in their own way. But so for me, though, once I entered my 20s, and I suddenly realized I had too many miracles happen. Too many miracles. And, they never really stop. I'll tell you something that happened to me just about 2 or 3 years ago. It just reminded me of the miracle-working nature of God. And I happened to be reminded of it yesterday when I was at my church. But about 5 years ago, I had gone to a church, and there was a nice group of people that were selling carved wooden statues that are carved in Bethlehem. They're Christian statues. And they had come by my church, and they used those statues to their relatives live in Bethlehem, carve them, ship them over here, and their families come over here and sell them, and they help support the people back and forth. So I'd gone to church, and I bought something from one of these people, and then I was downtown at my office, not at all near where that church is, and I walked out of the office with my wife to take a walk around the block, and I said, hey, let's go this way this time. We walked a different way than I've ever walked before, in a completely different direction. And then as we're walking around that direction in a whole different block than I ever go on, I noticed a crowd of people standing in front of a house on the street. And I thought, I wonder what they're doing there. And as I walked by, I saw one of the very people that I had just bought a statue from, the prior Sunday. So I said, hey, hi, how are you? She goes, oh, yeah, we just met you. I said, what are you doing here, out here? She goes, well, our grandmother passed away. And I said, oh, really? When did that happen? She goes, well, right now. She just passed away. And I said, oh. And then one thing led to the next. Next thing you know, I was invited in the house where her mother was in a guest house. Her mother just passed away, and she was like 95 years old. And they invited me in, and guess what? I went in there and led a prayer. We formed a circle around her bed, and with this group of people, a group of the people, and I led a prayer for them because I'm actually an ordained minister, and prayed for this woman who I'd never met before in my life. So the first time I ever connected with her as a human being was after she already had passed. But so here I am walking a different way than I'd ever walked before, connecting with somebody I just bought a statue from a week earlier. If I hadn't bought that, she wouldn't have recognized me. I probably wouldn't have said anything. And then suddenly I'm in, God has set it up. So for me, I'm an ordained minister. I'm inside their house doing a prayer for this woman who had just passed away within the hour. And so after that, I had to stop and be honest with myself. There's absolutely no chance that was a coincidence. I to this day, I've never ever walked around that particular block, that direction from my office. I never have. But that day, my wife and I just chose to walk this other way. And I even consciously remember saying, let's go this way today. And so that got me to a place where I then suddenly am called to act as a minister to say a prayer for a family and a woman who had just passed after a long life. So little things like that happen, and you have to say to yourself, is that just a coincidence? I changed my exact course, had just bought that statue a week earlier. We made that connection. Next thing you know, suddenly I'm by this family, and suddenly I'm inside praying for their family and leading a prayer for a person who just passed. So you can form your own conclusions. There's nothing flashy about that, but it's also, to me, a way that I remember thinking to myself, I have to remember that God is always with us all the time, even if we don't realize it. And here's the interesting thing about that particular story. Of course, I didn't have any idea that I was going to be seeing somebody I knew and suddenly be in with a woman who had just passed and saying a prayer for her and her passing. I had no idea that was going to happen. But somehow that inner dynamic of my consciousness guided me in that direction and created that possibility. And I believe that's how God works now. But that's typical of the kind of things that started to happen to me in my 20s. And I started to realize, and some of them much, much more, I'll call it flashy and dramatic than that, but still that I couldn't deny God's hand, that there was reality to it. And I know a lot of you listening have had experiences like that in your life too, because we are on a divine journey. And many of us have been protected so many times in our lives, and you know that too. You've been protected too. Where you could have had your life come to an end and God intervened and protected you. I've had that happen a lot of times in my life, not just once or twice. And so, you know what, my friends, I'm still very humble about the divine journey, but I'm absolutely convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a living God and we're divine beings we're human beings with a divine journey. And that divine journey opens up many doors for us. And I would say for any of you listening right now, this is a door for you and for me. That's why I call it the Gateway Show. It's a gateway to a different possibility of life, a diviner, a more divine, inspired, illuminated life that we've heard about. Some of us have heard about for a long, long time that's possible. But how many of us really approach it as a living reality? And quite honestly, the people listening right now, probably most of you do. But still, I think for a lot of people, they just think that's sort of just kind of a wishful, a pipe dream, not really real. And listen, I want to say one thing about that. I'm absolutely clear. I have lots of, Dinah says I was their blessing. Yeah, Dinah, I was their blessing, and you know what? She blessed me too. Because even now I'm still remembering the story. I wouldn't have thought about it except that I was at my church last night. The same people were there, and by the way, that remembered me from that night that happened years ago, and then we were talking about it last night at church. So they haven't forgotten, and neither have I. But the point really is that God can get us where we need to be. And we may think we're just wandering around with no meaning, and sometimes that may be true, but I think God has a way of getting you where you need to get to when you need to get there. And so, and that's the journey of faith. I'm the first to admit it doesn't always seem like that. And all of us see things in the news and stories that could make us question God. I totally get that. I have some dear friends that are atheists, and that's usually their main question. Well, if God's really real, why this? Why that? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? And, I don't think anybody really, really understands. But, so I'm not going to give you a platitude on that. But you know what? I will say to you this. If you're on the path of faith, the only answer to anything is to seek God more fully. It's the only answer. Because anything else will lead us back into darkness. But if we keep seeking God, guess what? We keep getting lifted up in light. And that's the only choice I think any of us have when we encounter the different things in life. Is just grow closer to God, to pull God closer to us. And then as we do that, then we start to become a happier, more fulfilled human beings. And we start to really have a life of great and supreme joy and inner peace. All right, this is Robert Sidell. It's the Gateway Show. I'm talking about how to be good to yourself. Actually, all these things, I will sort of tie that together when I come back from the break. But all these things are ways of being good to yourself. It's learning to recognize you are a divine being. You have an infinite Father, Heavenly Father, Mother, Creator God, whatever term you want to use it for it. And that force of God can transform and will transform your life for the better. This is Robert Sidell. Be back in just a moment. Stay tuned. For those of you on the radio, we'll be back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, it's interesting, Dinah. Like I said, I'd sort of forgotten a little bit about that story until I saw last night those little statues, carved statues. Those of you who've come to my office have seen some of those little statues I have of Christ. And now nobody really knows what Jesus looked like. By the way, it's interesting thing about the Bible. There's not one description of Jesus in the Bible. Not one description. It doesn't say he was tall, he was short. It doesn't say anything about him. It doesn't even say, I don't think it even describes, it doesn't really give personality traits to him. Well, that's not 100% true. It does say sometimes he was angry or this or that. But the bottom line, though, is for somebody that's made such a huge impact on this world, it's interesting that the disciples didn't consider it important, I guess, to describe what he looked like. And maybe that would have just been a distraction. Who knows? But so whenever we have a statue or a painting of Jesus, we have to remember that's just our projection. And who knows? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But it's just kind of interesting that there aren't any. But so you know what I want you to open yourselves to, and I have to remember this all the time. Feed my mind every single day. No matter what the world might tell you or seem to reveal to you, even if it gives you a message that might suggest disparity or hopelessness for the human race, let's say, or even your own life, doesn't matter either way. It really isn't. It's never hopeless because God's always real. And so we always have a chance to return back to our connection to God. We always do. One of my friends is a marriage and family counselor. Actually, she's retired now. But people come to her sometimes. I know her very, very well. I've known her now about 40 years. And people would come to her, maybe having lost a loved one in an accident or something. And she said there were basically two reactions they could have, the people, when they came to her. If people had faith, they could choose to give up their faith and say, there's no God. And why would I ever believe in God? Because a loving God would not have allowed this to happen. And that's one kind of response people have. And it's normal. I don't think God would even be angry about that response. I think God gets that. That's my own personal worldview. But she says if people had that attitude, they would just spiral downward and they wouldn't get better. She said another group of people that came to her would also feel angry and upset, maybe even angry at God, but they would choose to get closer to God. And when they got closer to God, they would get better. So it was quite interesting. Here's a counselor's experience that worked with many, many people over decades. And when you embrace God, your life gets better. If you reject God, your life gets worse. And it's not so much that, in my world anyway, it's not that God is punishing these people. It's not that God is saying, oh, well, I'm not going to help you because you're not seeking me. It's not like that. It's that what you feed yourself tends to guide you. If you're praying to God in light, you'll be filled with God's light. Therefore, you will get better. If you kind of walk away, you're not going to be filled with that light. So that's why it happens, not a punishment or something. And we can always come back. By the way, anytime you decide, the door is always open. Okay, we're back in the radio. This is Robert Sidell. It's the Gateway Show on every Sunday night, 6 to 7 p.m. live. Great pleasure to be with you here. The topic tonight, this show's on 6 to 7 every Sunday. The topic tonight is be good to yourself. And I was thinking, there's lots of ways we can be good to ourselves, but if it occurred to me, I was telling somebody I met today, I said, the difference between good and God is one letter, and that's all. And I don't think this is not just a play on words or something. I think they're pretty much come from the same word. Like have a good day. It's just a slightly different than having a God day. And so I would say to you that good and God are really synonyms for the same thing. And so the best thing we can do to learn how to be good to ourselves is learn how to be loving and forgiving of ourselves and embracing ourselves with all of our strengths and weaknesses. One of the spiritual teachers I spent some time with had a saying, and it took me years to really understand what he was saying. Maybe some of you can understand it instantly. I hope you can. He said, you're only as high as you can admit you are low. And he goes, if you can't admit that you have a selfish, petty part of yourself, selfish, petty, vindictive part of yourself, he goes, then you're really not very high on the spiritual journey. And so I thought for a while, well, why would he say that? Who wants to have a selfish, vindictive, petty part of themselves? And that's just one set of traits he was saying. But his basic comment is, whether you are controlled by those things are still there in your life. And they're still going on in your unconscious mind. And you see it on social media all the time now. Whether it's politics or anything else, you can see the pettiness and vindictiveness that people can have. And even other people that otherwise like to think of themselves very kind and loving people, they can turn around the next breath and wish somebody die, or hope that somebody gets killed or assassinated or something, or not even just assassinated, just anything. I mean, you see it all the time that people have this conflict of different emotions. So what he was trying to say is that if you can see that you have some of that in you, and we all have some of it, it's just what you do with it is the issue. We all, in Christianity, it's called the carnal self. Or some Christians might call it the sinful self, but whatever you want to call it, it's the more base part of our nature. And if you can understand that you have that, and doesn't make you a bad person, then you can see it more, and the more you can see it, the less you're controlled by it, which seems like a strange paradox, but it's true. That's why a lot of times these people that are like to think of themselves as loving, but then on the other hand are being very hateful, who, no matter where they are in any part of life, you see it a lot of times. Well, it's only because they don't see it. They're in denial about their own nature. They don't get what they're doing. But if they could see it about themselves without condemning themselves, then they could begin to heal it. So for me, let's say I see a angry or hateful thought emerge from my consciousness, or jealous, angry, or envious, or thought like that starts to come out of my ego mind, or whatever you want to call it. Let's say I see that, which I do sometimes. I say, okay, God, I confess to you these emotions of envy and resentment, or anger, or bitterness, and I release them to you right now, God. I just ask them to be replaced by your infinite love. So it's a way for me to take those emotions, instead of trying to pretend they're not there and then create an artificial perception of self that doesn't really help anybody. If I can say, oh, that's part of me, but it's okay, because as I've grown into God's grace, then I am embraced as God, a creation of God, whom God dearly loves. And God does not want me to condemn me because those things are within me. He'd rather I embrace them, understand them, and then if you can use them constructively. Sometimes you can use emotions like that in a constructive, healthy way. I'm not going to explain quite how in this precise. Well, I'll give you one example how I did that once. When I first came to Las Vegas, I decided to take the real estate exam. And it's funny, so I went to a little summary class. This guy taught a whole class that lasted about 3 months in preparation for the real estate exam. And then he gave a summary class at the very end of the whole 3 months. And of course, I'm am a lawyer, so I have a little different background than other people. But and so I came to the 3 month, the 2 or 3 hour summary, and I mentioned I hadn't taken the class, and yeah, and yeah, Denise saying, loving and embracing all of ourselves leaves no parts behind. Yeah, that's what we got to do, Denise, even if the parts we'd rather not see sometimes. So he said, you will have no way of passing an exam. You can never have it happen. That's what he told me. This goes back like that for like 39 years ago or something. And I thought, so I decided to use my ego as a good tool. I thought, oh yeah, that's what he thinks. I'm going to show him wrong. Doesn't our ego like to do that sometimes? But I decided to use it in a constructive way. So I thought, if he says I can't do it, I'm going to do it. So I did. Anyway, the short story is I passed the exam. So, but the point is that I used that ego nature in a constructive way. There are times you can use it in a very healthy, constructive way. But if you use it to be petty and vindictive and condemning of others, that's not constructive. It is not going to bring you happiness. If you're emitting a lot of hateful, condemning thoughts, those condemning thoughts exist right in your own mind, then you have to live with that. And it's been said, and I think a lot of you probably heard this saying before, if you condemn and hate other people, you're actually putting that poison in your own soul. And it's a little bit like drinking poison and thinking it'll hurt somebody else. That's an illusion. Or I'll give you another example. It's even maybe a simpler one to understand. If you let hatred and anger and vengeance and all these things just keep burning in your soul, it's like holding a burning coal and thinking it's going to hurt somebody else. It's not. You're the one that's going to get hurt. And so what we have to kind of look carefully at us, and we all have emotions. We all hear things in the news that create indignation in us and anger and frustration and bitterness. And I think all of us have some things like that. I could pull out a list of things that I think are injustices or problems in the world. I have a list too, just like you probably do too. But I also know that, so it's okay because that's part of me too. I have those emotions. You have to make it okay. But if you can't make it okay, you have to bury it in your unconscious mind and create a false image of yourself. And then you live in a false image, which you see a lot of people doing, which just traps them in a story. And I'm probably getting a tiny bit deep here, but it's worth thinking about. We can get caught in a deceitful self-deception, ego self-deception, where we pretend we're one thing when we're really completely different, and then we don't really have a chance to grow and become a better person. So one of the first steps, if we want to become a more happier soul, I like to say more advanced, but the truth is just happier, let's say, you have to be willing to recognize, okay, yeah, I've got some of that stuff in me. Jesus got angry when he went into the marketplace, right? He threw things around. He got angry. So there were various different things. He cried and got angry at other things and injustice of things, and he had his moments like that. So obviously those are okay emotions to have. They're part of who we are. If they're not okay, then we're all just trapped to something that doesn't work. So we have to make our own nature okay. That's how you can be good to yourself. It's okay to be who you are. You have insecure, hurt feelings about things sometimes. It's okay. But you don't have to stay there. That's the difference. You don't have to live there. Churchill said, if you're traveling through hell, by all means keep moving. Don't stop there. So if you're caught in an angry emotion or something, what I do sometimes, if I have an emotion come up in me that I don't like, and it's upsetting to me that the emotion's actually there, what I will do is I'll go into a private room by myself and say, okay, God, I just want to confess to you, I'm feeling kind of angry. I'm feeling my feelings are hurt right now. I'm disappointed in this person and their actions. I just want you to know that. I confess that to you. I don't wish any harm on that person. But I also want to confess those emotions to you so I can let them go to you. So that's how I handle a lot of emotions like that. Rather than bottling them up and trying to pretend I don't have any emotions like that, for me at this point in my journey, that wouldn't really work. All that does is suppress myself, and that's not being good to myself. So the ultimate step, Denise had said it real well, loving and embracing all yourself, leaving no parts behind. You kind of have to do that because you are all of that. If you're going to walk into higher dimensions of divine love, you have to be willing to be responsible for all of it and then handle it responsibly. Handle it responsibly. But if you're in denial or avoidance of that and cannot face that you have those parts of your nature, then you'll be trapped in a much more suppressed. And what happens when people are in that suppressed state, I won't mention his name right now, but there's a famous actor that a few years back was doing a comedy routine, and some people in the audience started saying, interrupting him and were insulting him and stuff, and suddenly he entered into a racist diatribe against these people, and just said really a lot of angry, bitter things towards them. And I'm sure what happened in his case was he had a lot of these feelings inside of him, as any of us could, about from any group of people. But they were all bottled up. And what happened is somebody pushed that button in him, and because he'd never faced it, it just burst out, and he said these things publicly. It caused himself a lot of harm. I don't think it really hurt the other people too much, but it hurt him. And my point is, the more you can, so that's what happens when you bottle everything up. Then you're sort of like a firecracker ready to explode. Somebody comes along and lights the fuse, and it explodes, and you act out in wrong ways. And I think we see a lot of that in our society today. We see people that go out and do very bad things because they have a lot of pent-up rage and hostility and hatred. And so we have to figure out ways to release that hatred and hostility and rage, which any of us can have, and to God, for those of us who believe in God. And one of the things Jesus taught is there's always forgiveness. So the best thing you can do to God is just to truly embrace and share everything about yourself to God and say, I need help. And I personally, Robert Sidell will say, I need lots of help every day. The good news is I've had a lot of help. And I think if you reach to God, you get a lot of help. So if I want to give you a message of hope, first of all, you're never beyond redemption, ever. If you haven't, you're never out of God's grace. You're never away from God's grace. You may have put a little bit of a door up, but God's still waiting there for you to open the door. So you never have to feel like you've been forsaken by God, ever, no matter what. God always wants you back the second you're willing to come back. And just keep that in the back of your minds. Wherever you are, whoever you are, God is always wanting to embrace you and lift you up. Always, 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 always. Okay, this is Robert Sidell. We're going to go to a break. We'll be back in just a moment. When we come back, we'll have Reverend Ernie here, and perhaps maybe Janet will be here too. We'll find out. Stay with me. I'll be back in just a moment. Yeah, my friends, it's interesting. Actually, when my dad passed away, he lived to 99 and a half, and honestly, I was very blessed that he lived so long. So I can't really think I got gypped in any way. I didn't. But I had known him my whole life and was very close to him. And so I went to a grief group at my church. And I thought, you know what? I think it's a good idea for me to do this. And so I went on and off for almost a year. And there was two nice ladies that run it, and I've become very good friends of theirs. And there's no charge for it, by the way, in case you're grieving something and you need to go to a grief group. Just let me know, and I'll tell you how to go. But so what I was going to say is that I went to this grief group, and one of the things they talk about it, and there's usually about 10 people there, and I've heard, believe me, every story from suicides to car accidents to everything in between, and it caused people great anger and sometimes bitterness and even hostility towards God. And so one of the things we would watch a video every week, and one of the things they talked about is, even if you're angry at God or disappointed or feel like God's not doing a good job or something like that, my friend Andy always says his mother would say that sometimes. But even if we have those feelings, if we share those feelings with God, it brings us closer to God. God is never angry. I'm convinced God will never be angry at you for any genuine communication you have with God. So what I learned from that grief group really did advance my spiritual journey. So I have a much more honest relationship with God than I ever used to. There's not a lot of pretense in my relationship to God. In other words, I'm just very honest with God. It's like, okay, God, I'm with you forever. That's just my journey. But I sure do question this, or I don't understand why. It hurts me. I'm sad. Whatever my emotions are, I confess it to God all the time. So let's see here. Let's see if we got Ernie here yet. Don't see him on here yet. Oh, there he is. Oh, okay. Hey, there you are, Ernie. That's good. So that's my journey. Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. I think that my sister-in-law is attending the same thing. Andy, he's a Bill Walsh, Todd Alt Risk on seminar. What exactly that is, I'm not sure. But anyway, I'll be curious to hear about Andy. Oh, there's Janet. Hey, good.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just trying to. Oh, there we
Yeah, there
go.
you're perfect. You're perfect. You're
Yeah.
perfect. You look pretty like usual.
Thank you. I
All right, we
just
can.
walked in the door from a wedding.
Oh, well, good
Two
timing.
weddings, actually.
All
Two
right,
weddings.
we're
Perfect.
just to come back on. Okay, we're just about to come back on. So, if there's any message I want to restate here to anybody listening to Facebook, the way to be good to yourself is to learn to, like Denise said, reach into yourself and embrace all of who you are and then offer it to God. Okay, we're coming back on the radio right now. Good evening, my friends. This is Attorney Robert Sidell and Minister too. And by the way, here's my book. If you don't have a copy of it, I've had a lot of people tell me that this book has changed their life almost on a weekly basis. And you can get it for free if you come by my office and pick up a copy. And or you can order it online at Amazon.com. So either way, I'll show it one more time. It's called The Gateway by Robert Sidell. Very easy to understand, and people tell me all the time it changes their life and has healed them in many different ways. Um, Hold on here. Okay, okay. Andy's saying that Ernie is perfect, and so is Janet on the screen. Okay, my friends, this is Robert Sidell. We're to our last segment on the show, and one of my favorite segments. I have Reverend Ernie and Reverend Janet here, the Revs, and who contribute to me every week and have blessed my life. Both of them have. Janet's been a friend of mine for over 40 years, and Ernie's been a friend of mine for about 12 years, I think, something like that. Anyway,
11th. Yeah, 11th.
11 years. Okay,
11,
but
yes.
still, it's one of those examples I'm talking about of a good friend shows up in your life, and we go to a meeting and you come out with a new friend, and you never
Right.
know when that's going to happen, do you?
That's right. Never
It's a
know.
gift. All right, I'll let you go first, Reverend Ernie. What prayer do you want to share with us tonight?
All right, Robert, thank you. The prayer is about learn how to be good to yours happiness in the present moment. I chose happiness. Lord, thank you for this blessed day. We give gratitude for the many blessings you have bestowed upon us. Guide us to be in awareness of attributes and qualities we have. Be happy now. Learning the secrets of finding happiness in the present moment in our everyday living. We thank you for providing us an excellent company of friends, loved ones, as well as strangers in good spirit. We are for the interactions that surround us to use it to strengthen our friendship bonds, our emotional, spiritual well being, and how we can be supportive to others, discovering and finding happiness and sharing with others. We give our gratitude for all that we have and take action from within, finding happiness in the present moment, experiencing miracles, creating heaven on earth, and so it is. Amen.
Ernie, I always love the enthusiasm and creativity you bring into these prayers. You do a beautiful job. It's very beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
always say God's going to hear those prayers and think, they're so good. I better make sure that He answers those prayers. just teasing you a little bit, but I think you do a nice job. All right, Reverend Janet, what do you have to share with us tonight? What pearls of wisdom do you have to share?
Pearls of wisdom. So, I texted you. I don't know if you saw it when you sent this topic. So, I just was discussing self care with some women last Sunday at my house. So, I had read an article. So, there were one, two, three, four, five things. I thought there were six, but that's okay. About that people should self care tips for balancing a full life with purpose and passion. So one of them was a morning routine, or in the case of Vegas, maybe evening because everybody's on different time frames because of work, right?
Right.
Because whatever time it is, it's usually quiet without interruption, whatever time your day starts.
Uh huh.
And nutrition, optimizing nutrition, because we all know that food is power, fuel, and health. And not only that, carving out a time each day to make yourself feel more energized, calmer, and happier. That way, you're likely to be that way around everyone around you. And then another one was rest. And part of that is learning to say no to certain things that you can't fit into your schedule, maybe, that your rest should be essential and come first. And time in nature, being outdoors, going for a walk, getting in fresh air. And then, of course, gratitude, because gratitude is powerful. So practicing gratitude daily helps us to reduce worries and boost our energy and mood. So she said, what was it? She said something about self-care was like a superpower. If we take care of ourselves, it's like a superpower to our whole being.
Well, I think that is somehow we've got to do that. So and for each of us, maybe a little different mix. Exercising, the food we eat, the food we feed our mind. What
Well,
is
yeah, exactly. That's true. You know,
because if no matter what you're doing on a physical level, if you don't feed happy, constructive, beautiful thoughts in your mind, then you're not giving good self-care, are you?
no,
That's beautiful.
you're not. You're not.
Well, Janet, I really appreciate you sharing those with us, those ideas.
No, you're welcome.
Hey, I want to do something. I don't think I've ever actually said this prayer on the radio before or Facebook. But I'm going to say it, the traditional Our Father prayer. Because I've been thinking about this prayer, and it is a beautiful prayer, obviously. And I'll say it right now. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine are the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
And that
Amen.
prayer, it's almost like it's easy to take it for granted, for me anyway, because I've heard it so many times in my life. But you know what? It's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. And I guess it came right from Jesus, and so therefore, it's very simplistic. It's just saying, let God's will be done. What I like is built in, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. It's really saying, if you want to be forgiven, you need to also forgive other people too. And if you forgive other people, you're going to be forgiven too, right? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? And so that's an important idea. And then the other idea is, lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil, which is just try to focus on the things that are really in our best interest. All of us have different choices that we can make. Some of them will lift us up and some won't. So the more we can focus on goodness and God, we're going to have a happier life. That's all I can say. Whatever way we do it, it will bear fruit. One step, I've heard it said, if you take one step towards God, God will take 10 towards you. So wherever you are, my friends, I just want you to know, our show's coming to an end right now, but I want to thank Ernie and Janet for always taking the time to bring us some positive ideas. And Janet, I love those ideas. And Ernie, I love your prayers, and I summarized it real, real well. And then also, I just want to, all of you who are listening, I want you to know you make a difference. Those of you who share nice thoughts. Andy Hangarter saying, nurture your mind. Absolutely. You got to nurture our mind. If we don't nurture it, we're in trouble, just the way it is. And every day, you're going to take a shower every day, you need to nurture your mind every day. It's the same thing. If you're going to feed your body, feed your mind and spirit. All right, my friends, we're to the end of our show here. May God bless and watch over you. Remember, God is real, and for that reason we can say miracles are real, and the best is yet to come. God bless you all till we get together again. See you all next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to all of you. God bless.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.